He spent over 25 years architecting and implementing learning experiences and technology solutions for some of the best organizations in the world. And as you'll see, he's passionate about creating personalized learning experiences using a modern and innovative content and the latest technology. And for today, Dave's going to review why building a continuous learning culture is no longer just an option. So without further ado, everybody, please join me in welcoming Dave Romero. Dave, go ahead, take it away.
Thanks, Bobby. I'm going to start sharing my screen here. If you can let me know, does it look like it's coming through okay?
Yeah, it looks fine. Yep.
Okay, good. It's great to be here, everyone. Thanks for joining on a wonderful Wednesday. We're actually excited to talk to you guys about this and tell you a little story. Quick background on me, making sure that I give you the context behind this picture. I am the president and co-founder here at Unboxed Training and Tech, and what we do at Unboxed is create training solutions and experiences for people using some of the technology we've created and also creating some out-of-the-box thinking content. I personally have over 25 years in the L&D and technology space. I have been doing this since the early days of LMSs came out. And one of the things that's persisted is I love to read. I'm currently reading Essentialism. If there's any other essentialists out there, please hit me up in the chat. I don't know if we can all do that or not, Bobby. I didn't ask you that question, but let me know if you're reading that because it's a pretty fun book. Also,
we'll be able to definitely have some questions pop up through chat. So we'll ping you when they pop in, Dave.
Very cool. I also just finished a 4-week trip, which explains this picture. COVID kind of put some challenges to our plans for travel this year. So made a trip up to New England, watched the trees change colors, ate some lobster, as it's called. And as I learned up there, if you're from New England or you have had that experience, hit us up there too, because it was a lot of fun. So the thing I want to talk to you about today is how to improve that learner experience, specifically by changing the way we think about continuous learning. And I want to describe a model that is common today, something that many of you are probably familiar with, and it's something we would refer to as the learn to work model. And this is the model that you may have heard something like hire to retire, but here's what it is. You finish school, and you get a job somewhere, and you're really excited to get going. And then, of course, you get hired. And then over that period of time, you finish your onboarding and it's complete, and you begin to work really, really hard. And then you hit this thing that we refer to as the hamster wheel, and you do your annual reviews, you get your 3% increases, you might get promoted, and we call that development. And the result of that is more hard work and stuff that you can do to work even harder. And we stay on that cycle for whatever period of time, and then eventually, hopefully, we can retire and we can move on to maybe something else. The reality is this model is one that expects you to come in the door to an employer knowing all the things you need to know in order to do the job you need to do. And over a period of time, you develop and you hopefully get an increase in promotions and opportunities. And the reality is right now, 8 out of 10 CEOs say that the skill shortages that exist threaten their company's growth. And that's because the skills that you might have early on are not the same that you'll need later. And those issues are persisting. In fact, only 20% of employees believe today that they're confident they have the skills needed for the future. The predictions are more than 50% of the skills that people have today are going to start changing in terms of the needs over the next 5 years. And a big part of that is because the way work is done today is very different, especially through technology, automation, and a more connected network and workforce. COVID accelerated that. So here we are in the middle of what probably took 10 years out of the timeline for these needs to come to fruition. So I want to share a different model with you and the concept behind this entire talk, and that is one that's a little similar but different. And that is you finish school, or maybe not, to get a job. There's less and less importance on the need to have all the skills you need to get hired and then do your onboarding. And then you get into maybe a different model, and we're referring to that as the work to learn model. And the work to learn model is one of continuous learning, where you're learning and adapting skills required and gaining the experience and competencies required in order to be able to either promote, increase, get a side hustle, retire, whatever it is. And this work to learn model focuses on one really important thing. It focuses on the ability for me to learn the skills that are necessary inside my organization, not just the knowledge, not just the resources, but the skills that are necessary in order for me to gain the experience and competencies to meet the needs of the business. And so when you think about what's being demanded of us now as L&D professionals, 93% of millennials want lifelong learning. And the number one priority for employees today is learning and career development. And that's very different than how it used to be. It used to be things like, security and in your work, or having the ability to be promoted, or even finances were a big part of it. That is very, very different. This shift is becoming more and more prevalent. And what that tells us as L&D professionals is we are in demand, and we have to start thinking of people are working to learn, and how can we make sure that we complete that for them and give them the opportunities to do that. So the impacts of these issues are huge, right? When you start to think about the revenue, the culture, the employee engagement of any sort of company doing this, every time you turn around, you look at that, whether it's these 20-year plus engagement studies that have been done, PricewaterhouseCoopers studies, that people are telling you that companies who do this outperform companies who do not. And that outperformance isn't just small, it's as much as 3 to 1 in most cases. And we'll share all the stats and the data and everything behind this. We've had quite a bit of fun looking at this data now over the past 12 years that we've been doing this at Unboxed. And so what we're here today to talk about is how you start doing this. And what we're trying to do here is break it down in more simple ways of thinking of it. Although this is very complex and takes many years, it actually isn't that hard in terms of the complication related to getting it done. It relies on a strategy, a foundation, and then a really different feedback and support mechanism. So we'll jump into that. Starting with your strategy, we always think about outcomes, not necessarily things like outputs and impacts. We help to define that continuous learning culture, and we recommend you actually define it for yourself. And building your long-term and near-term roadmaps are going to be critical for you, because you need to see success early, but you also have to have your eye on the long-term vision. This is my favorite bit, and I'm hoping that if anybody wants to comment on this piece too, you will. When we start working with many of our partners, we find that a lot of them focus on outputs, and those are the things like the needs. I need a PowerPoint, I need e-learning, could we just get a module on, could we do some virtual training? And the list goes on and on and on. And it's usually because we already have the solution in mind of what we think will work. Others will focus on impacts, like we need to see top line growth, or we need to save money, or do risk mitigation, or not get as many lawsuits, or whatever it is. And what we're encouraging you to do is start in a different place. Start with outcomes. Think about the problems that you're trying to solve. Think about the near-term and long-term problems that you're trying to solve. Think about the behaviors that you're wanting to change. Think about the possibilities that you're trying to create for your company and for employees inside your company. And when you do that, you will solve those things through outputs and create very different impacts versus starting with one or the other. And so that's a great place to start. And let's put this into something very tangible. So when we thought about this talk and the continuous learning culture, we wanted to start with context. And so we take somebody like Jen here, and she's starting in your company, or maybe she's changing roles, or she's going to another level. She comes in thinking, okay, I need to acquire knowledge. You probably have SharePoints and Google Drives and LMSs and LXPs and all the things that she might need, and she can start acquiring knowledge. And over some period of time, she's going to be practicing some skills, getting some feedback, and refining and applying that feedback. And the idea here is that in that kind of green zone, we want to be able to praise her progress and not expect perfection. And that's such an interesting shift for a lot of companies. There's an expectation that when you start in a job and or get promoted, you have to come in and you have to nail it. There's a lot of pressure on new hires who come in and they have that first VP presentation, or they have that big moment in front of major stakeholders, and to get it right in particular. And we have to start thinking differently about what getting it right means, because in order to develop this type of culture, you have to create a safe place for people to practice and grow skills. Now, over time, you should be able to see Jen demonstrate those skills on a more regular basis. You want to celebrate those things, and you want to give her continued refinement by having her teach others. One of the best ways to learn is to teach, and giving her the opportunity to do that in a very safe environment as well is important. And over time, the cycle continues and you go throughout your journey. This concept is obvious, but not at the same time, because what ends up happening is we end up getting caught up in a lot of what's needed to be perfection versus progress. And so we have to have better ways to measure progress versus just focusing on the outcome of perfection. So when we think about milestones, especially near-term milestones, we think about starting with those outcomes, then going into things like skill gaps that might be needed, current skill gaps and future skill gaps, looking at content. These are things like the technology that you might have or the different types of content. Of course, you're looking for effective modern content. You're looking for things that are custom when needed and out of the box when not. And you're looking for open access to these things. And we'll talk about that in a moment. You're then looking to define your learning journey. This is aligning your knowledge and your skills to the established outcomes that you've set up, and that you're sharing and shaping these learning experiences in such a way that combines the content and the practice and the on-the-job learning opportunities. And then the last piece of this is defining that impact. This is the training completions for a business impact. And without a doubt, you can easily get to a level 3, and then level 4 requires a little bit of additional support from the beginning and the onset and noise clearing, as we say. But at the end of the day, all of these impacts can be defined once you understand the outcome that you're going for. Over time, you're testing, you're learning, you're iterating, and you're growing, and you're increasing your sophistication in doing this. And what's really important is that having these short-term and longer-term milestones allow you to be able to show people in the company, here's the success and the progress we're making, despite how small it might appear to you on the inside. On the last piece of this, we'll talk a little bit about some of the tools that you might be able to use to do that and what to look for. But this process, while it looks simple, can be very much methodically done with the right set of tools and the right set of planning. This next piece is around the foundation. So to build your continuous learning culture, you do need a one-stop shop for L&D. There is no efficiency gained in having a SharePoint and a Google Drive and another SharePoint and your email box and all of these different sites around you to try to control the overall experience for somebody. And so I started thinking about this as we got into this conversation, and I was thinking about what are some of the things that that matter to me as a consumer, especially, or as a person who's continually trying to learn. And I usually listen to music when I do presentations, create presentations and things like that. And I was listening to Spotify, and I realized, Spotify in its own very, very elegant way is sort of this perfect harmonious connection of content and technology in a way that supports continuous exploration and learning. And so here's my story behind that. This is an ad from Spotify, and it's your music, your podcast, and your home. And when you think about it, it brings together awesome content, personalized to what I like. It gets to know me over time. It adds content that it thinks I might like. It connects me with other people to enable me to share experiences. And it really promotes a continued exploration so that I can begin to see things and learn things that maybe I hadn't considered before. Even things like this. This is an indie rock band that was recommended to me called Neutral Milk Hotel. And while the music's actually pretty good, I will say that I probably won't add this to my playlist. I want you to know too, I'm not affiliated with Spotify in any way. I just happen to very much care about the fact that I enjoy it. You could apply this to Netflix and probably many things in life, but the reality is we don't always connect those dots back to learning. So it got us thinking, if Spotify can do this, and if Netflix and other companies can do this, why can't we do it? And I started thinking, what are some of the barriers? And the first thing is, I, as a consumer, don't really care where the content comes from. I don't know if it's coming from Capitol Records or Def Jam Records. I just appreciate the content coming together. And I appreciate the ability to make my playlists, have my podcasts, and everything from music to meditation in one place, so that I can get the most enjoyment out of it. And it's expanding my mind and giving me possibilities to connect with other people. So when we think about doing this for L&D, we think about things like this. We think about, what if your training was in one place where all of your coaching was here and your recommended learning was here, and you had the opportunity to get leveled up in different areas of competency or skill, and was very supportive and encouraging. And it showed you how you compare to other people around those core competencies or skills that you need to develop. And it gave you one place, or your L&D home, to find everything that you need. And this is the crux of what a continuous learning culture really starts from a foundation standpoint. It's providing one place to go for your learning activities, whether they're in the system or outside the system, whether they're done by a TED Talk, a podcast, a session like this. and any number of different things. There's continuous learning happening around us. The problem is it's as if I'm listening to music outside of Spotify and there's no way to capture it inside the tool. And so a big part of this is bringing people together into one place. And so we think of this as like an L&D home. And this is the required content, the user-generated content, external stuff, LinkedIn Learning, Harvard Business Review, and then training events, things like what we're doing now, and then also, you know, your sales meetings and your national meetings and your things like that. And then you have things like your peer-to-peer and your expert networks, the opportunity to bring somebody into your organization, connect them with somebody who's a peer and or an expert to accelerate their learning. And then of course you have your traditional things like your development plans and your manager feedback and different practice scenarios, like we mentioned in the beginning. So as an example of the peer-to-peer piece, which is so important and underutilized, what if we were able to accelerate learning in a way that actually brought people together so that instead of trying to find the sage out there somewhere inside your organization who knows everything, and maybe some of you are that person, instead of just finding that person serendipitously, I could create that connection. So via AI, you can actually start to look for strengths and opportunities for each employee, connecting things back to how they did on a quiz, an event they went to, a coaching session they recently got, and all of those things that connect back to some story or index, if you will, of what this person's capabilities are, where they're strong and where they have opportunities, could lean to recommending better content for that person. For example, I might need better content on a particular area like collaboration or presentation skills. Or it could actually, and there's probably an and in here too, and it could also connect back to people. So it could make a recommendation to say, hey, you might get some help from someone like Bobby, or Bobby could get some help from someone like you. And here are ways to bring people together. So rather than serendipitously walking the now virtual halls of our offices, trying to find the one person who knows things, it's actually bringing that to the forefront for me. These are the types of things that can accelerate somebody's ability to build a continuous learning culture, because learning doesn't just happen from the top down, it happens from side to side and bottom up. The last piece here that I wanted to talk about today is really about embedding feedback and support. And this is that quantity and quality aspect, right? It's absolutely driven by technology, but it's a different mindset of creating that feedback mechanism for growth. So we think of feedback coming in three primary ways: machine feedback through video or AI powered types of content, where you're building skills through feedback practice sessions. Your coach, of course, informal and formal sessions. This is everything from having those one-on-one meetings to less formal things where it's just sort of ad hoc coaching and feedback. And then of course, peer feedback, the opportunity to get in front of people and do case studies and different types of sessions together to actually to be able to ask for input and feedback on what you're working on. And so all of that coming together in one place with better technology is enabling better coaching and better quality of experiences. So we think of this in terms of what's happening today. When you look at the Gallup organization and the studies they've done, one recent one shows, and this is a big one, that 2 in 10 employees strongly agree that their performance is managed in a way that motivates them to do outstanding work. And when you think of 2 out of 10, that is so low in terms of opportunity. There's really only upside to everything that we're talking about here. So a lot of the reason this is because the tools that people use tend to be very paper-based. You know, you go around with an Excel sheet or you happen to scratch some stuff down, and it's pretty old school. And there's not a lot of recent tech that's been focused on providing both quantity and quality of feedback to employees. And at best, we start to think about it maybe once a year, or more formal scenarios like I got to do my one-on-one with you and we got to go through a rhythm. Well, the reality is that's just not enough to be able to get a culture of continuous learning to embrace this. And so a modern coaching tool, something like this one, where you can actually go through a series of different questions, yes, no, rubrics, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 types of Likert scales, and models that allow you to show that you're listening to somebody's presentations, you're asking them questions, and you're recording how things are going against a very defined model, allows you to start to see things over time. And those things that you might see that are very different than what you'd have on a piece of paper, or maybe once a year when you go into your HRIS and do your annual review, is you can track progress over time. And that progress could be in the areas of things like communication and teamwork and all of the different soft skills that we're missing or that are going to be changing, or the new skills that are required in the future. These insights can be gathered and put together in a way that show you this person's activity over a period of time, combined with both machine and non-machine feedback to assess things like competencies and learning ability. And here's an example with, just AI, how you could use video through peer-to-peer conversation. It could be I submit a video for the purposes of practice, and I'm getting feedback, like the keywords that I'm using, am I using the right ones, or maybe not the right ones? The filler words, am I using too much, or things like that? And then of course my pace, am I too fast, too slow, and even more. These are very prevalent technologies that, as we start to think about the opportunity for coaching and giving a more continuous learning environment a chance, that we have to consider. So quick summary here is, just setting that strategy around those outcomes, the things that you're looking for versus focusing on outputs, which is so tempting, is critical for us to be able to think differently about this culture. And then building on the foundation is really about the facets like the learning values, the different tools that you have, and of course, all the resources that you have. And then lastly, when we embed this feedback and support into our overall continuous culture, we're really reframing the way people think about training. And we're reframing it in a way that says that failing is not a negative thing, or making mistakes. It's actually, we're praising progress and not expecting perfection. We will see more growth and more development over time by doing that. So I think I'll pause here and just open it up to any questions that you all might have, and just make sure that folks are tracking along, and check the chat.
Yeah, no, we definitely have some questions here, Dave. Great stuff so far, as expected. And this one kind of lengthy. The question is at the end, but we need to kind of tee it up a little. So as learning and performance solution providers, sometimes it's difficult to get the business partners to think about outcomes and impact. And oftentimes you can build the solution and reinforcement to drive the change post-learning, like increase sales and change in behavior, things like that. But it falls flat from a lack of commitment or buy-in. So what's the best way, if you could share, to present the business case?
Yeah, what a good question, because where we usually stumble is that there's a model that the company's always done it a certain way, and everybody understands that way. And when you come in with a different way of thinking, boy, you're not just moving cheese. I mean, you're moving blocks of cheese, right? This is a big deal. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to connect what it is that they are concerned about to what it is that they should be thinking of in the future. Because the reality is you only change when one of two things happen. You only change when the pain of that change is significantly less than the pain of staying the same. And so if you're staying the same and you're continually doing the same things you are, that pain has to be pretty low compared to what's coming. And what's coming is a whole group of people coming into your organization over the next 5 to 10 years that are going to be underskilled and incapable of growing in your organization unless they have the right framework to grow. And no longer will it work to say, hey, just put your head down and work harder and get on that hamster wheel. What will happen is the companies who do embrace a model like this are going to start attracting the best talent. So the way that I always think of it is taking what's important today and then over a period of time, and it might be 10 years, building a roadmap of the future of what that looks like. So each year incrementally starting to change different aspects of what you've been doing for so many years. And a good place to start that almost everyone can agree with is, what are the different types of outcomes that we're looking for? So a moment ago, I shared, that piece on starting with outcomes. And when I think about starting with outcomes, everyone universally agrees on, okay, yeah, I'll play this game. I'll go along and we'll define some outcomes together. And when you do that, it illuminates completely different outputs, different ways of thinking. So you might say, hey, one of the outcomes we're looking for is we want all customers to understand our brand value and message and how we're different than the competitors. Well, there are probably 300 ways you could go get that done. And there's probably ways that cost millions of dollars, and there's probably ways that cost nothing. And so with this person in partnership, you're co-developing a solution for now, and you're anchoring it towards something in the future that you can both agree on. And so part of this is just that give and take of a little bit of old with something new in every discussion that you go through, but a recognition starts with pain of same will eventually overtake the pain of change. And so we have to introduce a little bit of change at a time so that the pain of same doesn't become overwhelming.
Okay, and I knew this question was going to come in. I was hoping maybe we would have some a younger Opal staff member ask this, and don't think this is coming from me just because I'm the old guy. But is the work to learn culture just a result of millennials entering the workforce? You know, shouldn't they be expected to kind of adapt to existing company culture?
It's such a good question. It's sort of a yes and answer. Part of it is that, right? There's an acceleration due to a different level of thinking. Think about it this way. When I started out looking for jobs, and many of you are probably in the same category, not to date you, but I will date myself. We started out by opening up the newspaper, right? And or our parents shoved the newspaper at us. And we were going through scanning, all the different jobs that were in there. My first job was a busboy, a dishwasher busboy. And so you're going through and you're looking at all that stuff, and you go and you apply and you hope that you get the job with them. And you're just darn lucky to get it because the options are there in that newspaper, and that's pretty much that. And some years ago, something shifted. And instead of us being at the sort of information asymmetry that was found in the newspaper, we've become not only advocates of the current scenario for the purposes of information, but also, quite frankly, we have more information than sometimes employers do. And so because we have things like Indeed and different job boards out there, the amount of opportunity to find a job is significantly in favor of the person who's looking for a job. So now we are consumers of the workplace. Our ability to apply somewhere and get a job virtually because of COVID has just gone through the roof. And despite the fact that we will likely go back, and thank God we will, to a semi-normal way of working, this shift will persist forever because we've all proven we can do this. So the reality is your applicants that are coming through, whether they're millennial or not, are now consumers of jobs. They are no longer at information asymmetry. They are at parity, and if not, better. So it is incumbent upon those companies who wish to get the best talent to provide the best opportunities for learning and growth and development, not just because they want to attract great talent, but because they want to retain that talent to solve future problems that that company is going to face. So while it kind of is convenient to say, hey, maybe it's the millennials who did this, you could also blame the internet. You could also blame other vehicles, Indeed and job boards. But the reality is, like many things in life, no longer is the information asymmetrical.
All right. And next question is about peer connections and user generated content. Sometimes you kind of on thin ice with that, and there's some HR risks in that. Can you talk about how you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, there's a number of folks out there who work in regulated industries. We work with a lot of folks in the pharma, banking, finance space, regulated industries, and they're definitely more susceptible to this type of concern. HR risks are real, and you've got to take them seriously. You have to have a partner in that. What I will tell you is that the vast majority of companies out there are taking these types of risks, and they're calculated and very careful, and they're evaluating them against the gain. There is almost nothing you will do in business that has no risk associated with it. So what you have to evaluate is there enough goodness, 99% goodness and 1% not good, that you may want to consider when you're evaluating that risk. Many companies have done this. They've proven they can do it. They've got the rules in place. They've got the bylaws and the restrictions. They've got the auditing. They've got all the right things in place to make sure it works well, and they're getting great results with it. So the future of learning will involve, and it's not just the future, current and future, will involve peer-to-peer learning, shared learning experiences, and expert networks that you can tap into, because it's not reasonable to navigate hallways anymore to find the one person who knows something. You have to be able to get information quickly, and that's what keeps the company agile. So bottom line is, if you're stuck there, you're feeling like those regulatory things are in your way, you can chat with me. I can connect you with people. There are a lot of people talking about this now, and it is not as much of an issue as it had been when we first started doing this stuff years ago.
Good to hear. And another one now, really timely question. There's so much feedback now that's delivered in person. It's hard to imagine that there really hasn't been an impact. So how has COVID affected the need or the ability, frankly, to execute a continuous learning culture?
The funny thing about COVID is that it accelerated everything by a good 10 years. You could look at all the negative consequences of it and then look at some silver linings. As an example, I got to go travel for 4 weeks working remotely. That would have never happened. And an example of that within the learning space is that we can accomplish a lot of things remotely and not have to leave our home. And so as an example, when you think about annual conferences where the entire company would come together in one place and you charge up the bill of millions and millions of dollars at the hotel and the food and the travel and leaving your family and everything that goes with it, disruption from the work, day-to-day stuff. Here we are, right? We're having conferences, we're having meaningful conversations, we're connecting with people, and we're able to do this. So the reality is it's just a shift, right? It's a reframing of how we think of it, and the impact has only accelerated the reframing or that shift in creating this work to learn culture. And so offering content up from a single place is great. Offering connections is even better. And then creating experiences for people is the best. So all of these things are possible remotely and virtually. It just takes a little bit of reskilling on our part to get there. And that's what we're going through right now, Bobby.
Okay, good. Yeah, and I've gotten a couple of questions now, kind of tech related on the tech side there. You mentioned needing the right tech to enable a continuous learning culture. So from what you've seen, I don't know if you can single it out. Is there a platform out there that does everything that you've described?
What an awesome question. The fastest and shortest and quickest answer is absolutely not. That's a bit like saying, is there one streaming service out there that does it all? I mean, I'm not gonna even ask you guys this, but how many of us have like Netflix and Hulu and heck, everything, right? So no, there's absolutely no one platform to rule them all. And if there is, you're going to be significantly constrained competitively. So the best thing to do is to find platforms that integrate together. The future is in data integration. The future is in creating experiences across multiple systems so that the end user doesn't know. Again, Def Jam Records or Sony, BMG, I have no idea who I'm listening to or what I'm doing. I don't know where the content came from, but I know I like it and I know that it's helping me grow in some way, the podcasts, et cetera. So the reality is there is no one platform, but you are looking for important things in platforms like the ability to connect to other things, the ability to potentially customize certain features for you if you're a very specialized business, potentially to do some different experiential things in there, such as more virtual learning capabilities or peer-to-peer networking. Enabling things like that are very important. So you are looking for the right types of platforms and very well-connected platforms, but not one single platform.
Okay, so obviously you've got a little experience in that, and you would have a really good idea as to what to look for and be able to answer implementation questions. So based on that experience that you have, how long does it traditionally take to implement a new technology platform with with integrated coaching, with AI, and some of the other tools that you showed?
It's hard to say years and take it seriously, Bobby, but no, the short version is you could be up and going in a matter of weeks, and you will not be in a situation where you say, I'm done ever. So the reality is these types of things should be well thought through and architected from like a road mapping standpoint. It does start with things like you're going to need an LMS or some sort of learning repository. You're going to need HRISs and things like that. But what you're likely to do in that auditing phase that I mentioned earlier is you're going to go back and you're going to look at what do I currently have that I can use and how long can I use it until I either need to make changes in it or integrate something different. So the way that I think about this is less about when am I done or when am I complete with these types of things, and more about what is my path and what capabilities am I trying to create along what time frame. And so, for example, with a learning experience platform or something like a learning platform, you would likely expect somewhere in the range of 3 to 6 months to get you up and going officially. And then over a period of time, continuing to connect and invest and do different things. And that might take you into 2 to 3 years before you're actually going, hey, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about the AI sentiment analysis and the different programming aspects of things that I've done. And I'm starting to see that level 4 results and the things that I'd expect to get in the long-term state.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I think we're out of time, and I appreciate you putting up your information, your contact information on the last slide up there. And we're going to have the platform open until November 29th, so people can come in and review the session on there. Some of the fantastic info that you shared. Thanks again for joining us, Dave. It was a really great insight on how to develop the continuous learning culture that your people really want.
Thanks, Bobby. I appreciate it.
Yeah, fantastic information. So on behalf of everybody here, just want to thank you so much for joining us, Dave. Have a good rest of the day.
You too.